let's begin a lesson here. Let me see if I can change that a little bit. Okay. A lesson here in this book written by Rabbi Shalom Arush, translated by Rabbi Lazer Brody. These are the books. Miracle Guide for Men Only. Now in Kabbalah, the idea of the dove on the top is the idea of Zeranpin, if you're familiar with the concept. It's the male force, the giving force in the world, and below is the nesting female. And so this is the guide of peace, Garden of Peace, the guide for the male, how it is that the man can bring peace into his home and that he's really in charge of that. So let's come over here and let's see. This book is really a book everybody should read. It's done a tremendous amount for me. I only bring things to read that make really a difference to me. No comments, please. This is chapter 2. Let's see what he says. This chapter teaches one of the most important foundations of Shalom Bayit, or peace in the home. First, I'd like to share a true story with you. A husband came to me with a long list of things that he does for his wife. He devotes time to her every day. He's attentive to her needs and buys her everything, even spoils her. Apparently she should be the happiest woman in the world, but no, she's miserable. And they don't have peace in their home. Even worse, she frequently lashes out at him in anger. What's going on here? To my dismay, the phenomenon is quite familiar. It was clear why the husband had a turbulent home. I told him that his frequent comments about everything she does were destroying her happiness. By the look in his eyes, I knew that I was right on target. All the gifts and niceties in the world aren't worth a constant stream of comments and criticism. The wife of a critical husband is broken, depressed, pained, and has no vitality. One of the most important foundations of Shalom Bayit is that a husband should never criticize or comment about his wife's under any circumstances. Now, I probably do myself. I tongue-in-cheek with my friends, just about what it's like to be married and, the struggles that we have with our wives. Before we clarify and elaborate on this principle, we should understand that marital peace is impossible as long as a husband continues to criticize his wife and to comment about everything she does. Now, that particular thing, I don't think I do that. So I've been beaten away from that. So every tiny comment is a crack in the wall of marital bliss. With more and more cracks, the home eventually crumbles to the ground, heaven forbid. Hashem created the marital relationship in such a way that a husband's criticism can do terrible damage to it. A person has to be insane to try and change the law of creation. Therefore, don't expect your wife to get used to comments and criticism. Don't demand maturity or rational behavior from her. The comments and criticism literally destroy her, for that's the way Hashem created her. This is her honor, he writes. First of all, we should know that the spiritual source of a woman's soul is honor. Her entire vitality and happiness is dependent on the way her husband honors her. Therefore, any affront to her honor damages her soul, weakens her vitality, and virtually kills her both spiritually and materially. Interesting. The worst breach of a woman's self-respect comes from her husband's comments. Even if his criticism is gentle and delicate, she suffers. Even more so when the comments and criticism are cutting and brutal. A woman wants to be perfect in her husband's eyes. This is her honor, her happiness, and her security. Her husband's snide remarks destroy her self-image and her security. Each morsel of criticism is his statement that she is not perfect. To her, that means she's nothing. A wife that's subjected to comments and criticisms finds life unbearable. Now, the principle that comments are the opposite of honor is seated within religious law. One is not allowed to make remarks to one's parent or rabbi, for this is a breach of honor. Even if a son sees a father committing an outright transgression, he's not allowed to comment or criticize, only hint in a roundabout manner. Whether or not the father understands the hint is not the son's responsibility. Later we'll learn alternate ways to influence a wife. Comments and criticisms are certainly not the way. A wife's honor is even more sensitive than a father's honor. We're allowed to hint to a father, but we're not even allowed to hint criticism at a wife. Now, the first foundation, he writes, many husbands come to me with their marital issues with a long list of complaints about their wives. I listen to them and then tell them that they don't have marital peace because they criticize their wives. I've never had a case of a husband admitted to the mistake of comments and criticism and then made a firm resolution to change. That didn't see dramatic improvements in his marriage. In other words, if he stops that, everything gets a lot better. Being frustrated with your wife and letting her know that you don't like what she's doing. Frequently, women complain about their husbands with a long list of grievances. Most of the time, the wife doesn't know how to put her finger on the real source of her anguish, her husband's comments and criticism. Husbands complain that their wives make mountains out of molehills. They tell me that their wives are always complaining about apparently minuscule problems. The truth is that when she's broken and sad from her husband's constant comments and criticism, every tiny thing upsets her. When he criticizes her, she can't understand him or be considerate of him in any way. She becomes argumentative, hostile, and displeased with everything he does. Emphasis. I can't sufficiently emphasize the importance of this foundation principle in building a marriage. Never comment or criticize. Criticism is so devastating to a wife that it can actually lead to physical ills and health complications. As long as a husband continues to criticize his wife, it's pointless to deal with other factors that affect marital peace. The first foundation must be corrected before we can deal with any other issues in the marriage. A husband should therefore appeal to Hashem for help in refraining from commentating or criticizing his wife in any way. Husbands are amazed to see the striking difference in their relationship with their wives as soon as they begin working on this point. Now, we'll explain it on a deeper level why refraining from comments and criticism in the home is so very important. He says, this is a principle. The wife is a mirror. Let's stop and contemplate Hashem's exact tailor-made divine providence for a moment. Since everything is under Hashem's control and designed to facilitate a person's individual soul correction and the correction of the world in general, then there must be a rationale behind why Hashem has instilled zero tolerance of her husband's comments and criticisms in a wife. Why is this so? Why should it be so sensitive for a woman? What's the reason we need to learn from this? Why can't her soul tolerate criticism? My esteemed teacher, Rebbe Lozer Berlin, Shlita, provides the answer. As a young man, I asked him to teach me the foundations of marital peace. He taught me the following two principles. He said, first of all, let me just switch this around a little bit. There we go. First, the wife is a mirror of the husband. Now, what does that mean? She reflects who he is. This principle comes from the Holy Arizal. Any deficiency he sees in her is actually his own deficiency. Second, never make any remarks, comments, or criticisms about anything she does, even if she's done a gross misdeed. Rabbi Berlin told me that everything I see in my wife is a message for me. Frequently, a wife's unpleasant behavior is an indication of something askew in the husband's service of Hashem, or of something else that needs correcting. On a more basic level, the wife's disrespect of her husband merely mirrors the husband's disrespect for his wife. It's so interesting. This is a basic Kabbalistic principle that everything that the woman has really comes and is breathed into her, so to speak, from her husband. If he places her on a pedestal, then she'll do likewise. The above two principles are independent, since any deficiency that a husband sees in his wife is really his own shortcoming. Then he certainly shouldn't try to correct her, especially by reprimanding or criticizing. Instead, he should evaluate himself and correct what needs correcting. When he does so, she'll automatically change for the better. We share with our wives. We share our ruach. If our ruach is a nasty criticism one, she'll be like that too. Rav Berlin emphasized that these two principles, knowing that a wife is the husband's mirror and refraining from comments and criticism no matter what, he says it saved his own marriage. Now, I'd have to say the same thing when I first read this book, and maybe 10 years ago, I don't know what it was. I mean, I've been married a long time, but problems in the marriage could continue. And try to find a way to sweeten that relationship. That's what this is all about. With ignorance of these two principles, a husband can't possibly avoid criticizing his wife, particularly when he feels like he's doing her a service by correcting her actions. Since the wife can't stand criticism, they lose their marital peace. One who is equipped with the knowledge of these two principles, in other words, if you're critical, she reflects criticism back at you. So he says these two principles will never comment on or criticize his wife's actions, even the biggest mistake she might make. Knowing that she is his mirror, he searches to correct within himself. Now this is an interesting idea. The flaws he sees within her. This is the rule. Hashem shows a husband what he needs to correct by way of the wife. Any negative characteristics he sees in his wife, every flaw and every mistake she makes shows him what he needs to rectify in himself. His looking at her is exactly like his looking in a mirror. The shortcomings he sees in her are actually his own. The wife. The reason why a wife is so sensitive to comments and criticisms is because Hashem doesn't want him to criticize her in the least, but rather only to correct himself instead. Now, what he's saying like this is the concept, where I see what he's saying, is the concept of the principle of a Kodesh Baruch Hu, who is the giver. Is the husband needs to be the giver, not the critic. He needs to give his wife all the room in the world, and she will blossom. If Hashem would have desired that a husband correct his wife, then he would implant it within her a soul that tolerates criticism. But it actually works the other way. But as the husband corrects himself, the wife is corrected too, since she mirrors his behavior. So one can effect a change within one's wife by correcting oneself without saying a single word to her. The entire mitzvah of marriage is designed as a soul correction, a set correction for the soul, for the husband's soul. For according to the dry law, a woman, I don't know what dry law means, but the law, a woman isn't obligated to get married. So I think he means Jewish law. I'm not saying a woman doesn't have an obligation to get married. She can live a life on her own while she is commanded to get married and to have, while he, on the other hand, is commanded to get married and to have children. I run into this all the time. From an esoteric standpoint, the Arizal teaches that a woman has been corrected already. She comes to the earth to facilitate her husband's soul correction. Now understand that that is what a woman does. And her criticisms and her moldings are based on what she's hearing from him, or she's the ruach, the spirit that she gets from him. A wife isn't programmed to facilitate her husband's tshuva. Any flaw, mistake, or shortcoming on his behalf triggers a reaction from the wife. This works in the opposite manner as well. Any improvement or spiritual reinforcement in the husband elevates the wife. will soon see and learn how to interpret her reactions. With eyes of Amunah, have faith, he says, we see that a wife's characteristics are designed to help her husband become a righteous person. So that's the shir for today. This is Baruch Fleischman, and you've been listening to the Tikkun Elevator Kol, a terrific book, The Garden of Peace, a book that any man. I was walking behind my house, or let's say there's a lake near my house, and I saw a young married couple with two children, and she's talking. And in the meantime, he's criticizing what she's, oh, no, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. Now, these are people, and, I could see that he's irritated by all the things that she's saying, and she keeps going on. All someone has to tell him is this is not a good path. Criticizing her and telling her that her thinking is wrong is not what to do. So that's the lesson we have over here, and we'll go on. We'll see if we can get a few more lessons out of this. This is Baruch Fleischman, Tikkun Elevator Kol.